Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good evening. I am going to call the regular meeting of the Nevada City Council to order. Today is Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, and it is 6:31 p.m. February 28th. What is that date? That's so
Bernadette Peters' birthday.
strangely familiar. Bernadette Peters' birthday. Who, is there somebody else's birthday?
John Turturro.
John Turturro. I don't know who that is. Anybody else?
He's a great actor.
Adam Klein. Happy birthday, Adam Klein.
Thanks,
Happy
everybody.
birthday.
Our favorite local celebrity.
Thanks, everybody.
Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as much as I give you shit, I want to thank you for being here in general
Yeah.
at this table.
You bet.
What's your language?
Okay.
Like you not a word.
Okay. So, as we've done in the past,
Downtown.
in order to participate in public comment for items not on the agenda, we will need those wishing to speak to fill out the speaker cards, which are available on the agenda table along the side of the wall over there. I will turn my phone off. My mom's texting me. All right, and you'll return those cards to the basket right here with Gabby, our deputy city clerk, and she will randomly pull those cards when I open public comment period. Public comment for items not on the agenda comes up soon on the agenda, so please come fill out the speaker cards if you have not already. And we are going to move to our Nisenan tribal recognition by Vice Mayor Peterson. Please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We acknowledge that the Nisenan people are still here among us today, though nearly invisible. We understand that we are on Nisenan land that was never ceded, and the original tribal families have yet to recover from the near genocide of their people. As a resident or visitor in Nisenan land, we support the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe in efforts to stabilize their people, as well as their campaign to restore federal recognition.
Thank you, Gary. I would like to ask Councilmember Fleming to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Oh, sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Doug. And Madam, thank you. And Madam Deputy Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cece.
Here.
Councilmember Klein.
Here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Peterson.
Yes.
And Mayor Fernandez.
Yes, I am here.
All present.
So next, we're moving on to the adoption of the agenda. We will be pulling item number 6, a presentation from the Nevada County Community Foundation. As they are not able to be here this evening, we will schedule them for a future meeting. Council, now is the time for any agenda modifications. Would you like to make any changes to the agenda, pull consent items, or do we have any recusals to announce? All right, I'm looking for a motion and a second to adopt the agenda without item number 6.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cece and a second by Vice Mayor Peterson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. We have no presentations this evening. So we're moving right along to public comment. Government Code Section 54954.3 provides that any member of the public may address the City Council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss issues brought forth under public comment. The council cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on a future agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on the consent calendar and each agenda item at the time it is heard. As I stated when we opened the meeting, in order to participate in public comment for items not on the agenda, please make sure you fill out the cards over here on the agenda table and pass them over to Abby, our deputy city clerk, and she will take care of that. What's that? What did I say?
You skipped her G and went straight to Abby.
Abby, isn't that your name, Abby?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but, right. All right, sorry about that, Gabby.
It's okay.
Each Public comment, we'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we will keep that time. There'll be a little timer up here in front, so you can also keep the time. The total time for public comment for items not on the agenda will be an hour and a half. We will continue to pull names from the speaker slips until everyone has spoken, or the 90 minutes is up, whichever comes first. As a reminder, we ask that everybody adhere to the rules of decorum established for this meeting as posted on the walls and available at the podium. Any disruptive behavior, threats of violence, and actual violence will not be tolerated. Clapping, yelling, or making noises during or between others' times to speak is not allowed, although we encourage you to display your support if you would like through other means. Folks have done a really good job at the silent fingers as a way to clap. Only those that have been called to the podium can be in line behind it. We ask that any flags or displays not block the aisles or block anyone that is speaking. The sharing of time is not permitted. And furthermore, I'd like to take a moment to speak to some of the public comment from our last meeting. Unfortunately, I was not well, and I was unable to attend. I was watching from home in real time. I was then, and continue to be appalled at the level of bigotry in the form of anti-Semitism we all endured. I am sorry that happened here. I am sorry, particularly sorry to my Jewish friends and neighbors. After some research and phone calls, it is clear to me this was part of a multi-state coordinated effort to spread hate and sow discord in our community and in our democratic process. I am confident local organizing groups were not involved. As the mayor of Nevada City, I want to reaffirm our commitment to standing in opposition to all forms of hate and bigotry in our community, particularly at this time. And just in case that wasn't clear, Nevada City stands firmly against racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, and sexism. And any language espousing such is not welcome in this building, nor in this community. Now, what does that mean? It's a lot of words, right? Those words are largely aspirational. They are a start, and that's where we've started. I can't control all that happens in this town, and I certainly cannot prevent every instance of hate and bigotry. But please know that this council and our staff are working to make conditions safer so that the democratic process here in Nevada City is accessible. We all deserve to feel and be safe. So I respectfully ask that folks adhere to our rules of decorum so that everyone has access to this space. And with that, Madam Deputy Clerk, will you please give us the first 4 names?
Elizabeth Newman, Karen Ram, Dan Thiem, and Don Dachler.
Hi, my name is Liz Newman. I'm a Nevada County resident. I want to start by saying how disappointing it is that a ceasefire resolution has not yet been put on the agenda. I understand that the fear of causing division within the community is a concern, but what you're not realizing is that there's already division, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And the only way to bridge that is by openly discussing this issue. I understand that many think that this is a complex conflict, but you don't need to be an expert to recognize the immorality of over 35,000 civilians dead in a little over 140 days, 70% of those being women and children. That is not complex. We have asked you repeatedly to join our voices with the voices of over 70 other cities in the United States that have all passed resolutions on this conflict, and that number is growing. We don't want to pay for any more wars. We don't want to be complicit in this conflict. Israel is being brought up on charges of genocide at The Hague, and the United States government is still trying to fund Israel with billions of dollars in military aid. Palestinians are being slaughtered with American weapons paid for with American taxes. Money that could go towards feeding and housing our homeless, our disabled, our veterans, literally anything other than dropping bombs on babies. By staying out of any conflict where there is an oppressor and an oppressed, you are choosing a side. You are choosing the side of the oppressor. Calling for a ceasefire is not problematic. Standing up for human rights and supporting a ceasefire does not make any sane person feel unsafe. If it does, they are actively trying to victimize themselves. Can you imagine the entitlement and the privilege that goes into walking around Nevada County, California, drinking iced coffees, going to hot yoga, and talking about, I feel unsafe if anyone calls for a ceasefire in Gaza? You have your Jewish members of your community telling you that they support a ceasefire. You have Christians, Muslims, and all other walks of life telling you that they support a ceasefire, yet you're choosing to only listen to a minority of your constituents, not recognizing that the majority of voters in the United States, 61% to be exact, want a ceasefire, and that it's government officials like you who refuse to listen and represent us. We have people lighting themselves on fire, hoping to be heard, asking to be heard. As far as jurisdiction, precedence has already been set. As I already mentioned, more than 70 other cities have already passed resolutions on this matter. We are tired of telling our government officials that we do not want our tax dollars being used to fund death and destruction. Speak for us. Let the world know that if this conflict continues, it will not be in our name. And I know that you question the impact of a city council resolution and what that would have on such a distant conflict. But every name added to this, every voice added to this, puts more pressure on politicians, and every politician calling for a ceasefire adds to the collective pressure on a global scale. This conflict involves us. Please let us have the hard conversations as a community. Please just do the right thing and put a ceasefire resolution on the agenda. We are not going to go away.
Thank you, Liz.
Good evening, council members. My name is Karen Rom, and I'm a resident of Nevada City and an Israeli-born Jew. And I'm here to beg you to listen to your constituents and put a ceasefire resolution for Gaza on your agenda as soon as possible. I've dragged my feet to come in here and publicly comment, but this week, Aaron Bushnell's brave final act has put into perspective just how cowardly it is for each of us benefiting from the privileges of U.S. empire and paying taxes to bomb children abroad to not speak out in every way possible against the atrocities we're witnessing. This has been such a particularly painful thing for me to speak out on. My family was raised and indoctrinated in Israeli society. My parents, my aunts, my uncles and cousins, my grandparents, who miraculously survived the Holocaust, only to come to a place they were told was Zion, a safe haven, and immediately made to kill for it. Over decades, I have realized that Zionism, not Judaism, but Zionism, the movement and framework that is motivating this genocide in Gaza, took away key parts of my family's humanity, and conversations about the rights of Palestinians to exist, let alone their right to return, always ended in arguments and emotional alienation between me and members of my family. Of course, none of this has ever compared to the material and psychological pain Palestinians have endured for decades. If you go to occupied Palestine, the apartheid there is in plain sight. I've seen the walls of surveillance, the checkpoints with my own eyes. I've heard the dehumanizing ways in which Israeli Jews have spoken about Palestinians. Zionism has given Jews the illusion of safety in exchange for their very humanity. Trust me when I say that there can never be true safety in oppressing another people, and October 7th clearly demonstrated that. The Jewish folks in this county that you think you are protecting by not even allowing for the possibility of a ceasefire resolution to be passed here, to not speak out against the starvation and annihilation of 2 million people does anything but protect the Jews the world over. The opposite is true, and in fact, the training of militarized police forces by the IOF in many U.S. cities only goes to show that Palestine is a demonstration and training ground for how to oppress, surveil, and commit state violence on people here in the U.S. Not only is our humanity at risk for not speaking out against clear genocide and ethnic cleansing, our own bodily safety and livelihoods will always be in danger if Palestinians are not allowed to exist and be free. We must do everything we can to maintain our humanity and speak out for the precious lives we're losing daily. Ceasefire now, free Palestine.
Thank you, Karen.
All right. Thank you. Madam Mayor, thank you for your words earlier. Those add a lot of context to what I'm about to say. Thank you to the rest of you for your service to our community and your patience, of course, in listening to us over the last several meetings. Many of us tonight have spent months trying to convince this body to agendize a ceasefire resolution, so far with no success. We spent months trying to convince the 5 of you to talk about it, and so far to no avail. I understand now the perils of putting a ceasefire resolution on the agenda. It seems divisive, and after last meeting's abhorrent anti-Semitic comments, it's intimidating. War's uncomfortable. People say some nasty things, do some nasty things. But tonight, I'm going to say something different. For me, it's not necessary to convince the 5 of you to pass this resolution. Doing so removes my agency for standing up for the innocent. It limits my voice to fit within the constraints of our city government. And I mean no offense. However, I don't need a resolution to know that genocide is wrong and to say it out loud. Instead, I'm going to use this public meeting to go on the record so people know where I stand. Today is day 145 of the war in Gaza. I'm standing up to say stop. It's time for peace, to restore the dignity, the freedom of the innocent Jewish, Christian, and Palestinian victims of this war. It's time to free the hostages and stop the violence. I speak here tonight because my voice needs to be heard by every marginalized person who suffers the indignity of discrimination, oppression, violence, and stigma in our community and abroad. Council members, I came here to speak to the millions of people out there who need a friend, a voice. I came to say to them, wherever they may be listening, today I stand on your behalf to defend the values of peace, personal liberty, compassion, and human decency. I say to them, I may not be with you in person, but I see you, I hear you, I feel your pain. Whatever weight you carry is not yours to bear alone. Let me carry some for you. Let us all carry some for you. Council, I hope the weight of the world may be a bit lighter for somebody in our community who just needed to be seen and heard today, who just needed to know that our town cares. So much weight is so easily shared atop the shoulders of people who care, and our shoulders are broad, much broader than this room. So join our lift if you can. It's a worthy cause and one our community wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
So my name is Don Dockler. I live on Gracie Road, outside of the city limits actually a little bit. And my wife and I walk down to Pioneer Park quite a bit, and the Elizabeth Heffelfinger Wagon Shed is one of our favorite places to walk by. And the problem is the condition of the building is pretty rapidly deteriorating. The problem is that the pine needles and the leaves don't get raked off. It's a shake roof, and so it soaks through. And so the roof decking is in tatters in various places. And it has a really nice collection of early Nevada County transportation things, a couple of which have been moved into the old Alpha building, which is really nice to see there. And so I think it needs a metal roof because in the summertime, those pine needles and leaves get very dry, and one spark from a neighbor's house fire or a forest fire, and I think the whole thing will burn down really easily. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that to your attention because the staff report said that it doesn't get used very much, but if it was kind of cleaned up and the inside of some of the implements were cleaned up, and so it didn't look quite so dingy, I think it would get a lot better look. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the next 4, Saxon Thomas, Yasmin Batchmaya, Charlie, and Elisa Wojciechowski. Sorry, I probably had to do that.
Homakani, Nishnal Nimni. I am Saxon of the University of Rancheria. It's good to see everyone again. I did learn my lesson about how fast 3 minutes can go, so I'm not going to dive into our whole history, but you can find it all, chirpca.org, chirpca.org. But I want to talk about the homeland return that I touched on last time for the tribe. We just hit a new milestone. We just raised over $750,000, which is incredible for us. We have over 1,000 donations, and a lot of this is our community members, and I just wanted to come publicly and tell them all thank you. And everyone who's been sharing all the efforts, the volunteer efforts we've had, just outstanding. And in case anyone doesn't know, it is for the Woolman property. So we're getting one step closer every time. So I'd like to thank everyone for that. And another thing that was brought up to me today, since I'm just going to talk about this, is the name Nevada City Rancheria. It's one of those things, as a tribal person, you know where it comes from, Nevada City Rancheria. We had our rancheria in Nevada City. Seems kind of obvious, but there is a little bit of misconception that we all originated directly from Nevada City and nowhere else. We do have family in what's known as Grass Valley, Rough and Ready, other surrounding areas. We were the foothill Nishnawin tribe. Our rancheria had to be put in Nevada City. If it was Grass Valley, we would be called the Grass Valley Rancheria, but we are the foothill Nishnawin. There was a lot of misconception around that, so I just want to clear that off the table. But something with the Homeland Return, since it's so much fun to talk about, and I'm really excited about that. It's a campaign, but it's not about enticing or enriching one family. We are a tribe. We are multiple families, multiple members, and it is huge for this, huge for us to get this return. We're going to actually have I'm going to say it, we're going to have a safe place. I'm already assuming that we're going to get it because that's the way positivity works, but we have a safe place that we're going to do our cultures. We can do different ceremonies that we haven't been wanting to do in our backyard, since some neighbors might think that's a little bit weird. So I would like just to thank the public in general, our community, all the council here. I know a lot of people have been sharing our posts and spreading the word. And thank you to everyone. One of our big donors was a foundation. It was over $500,000. We haven't released a name yet, but we're going to do a nice big press release for them too. And yeah, thank you guys, and homakani.
Thanks so much, Saxon.
Yasmin Bachimaya. On February 14th, Madera City in California passed a unanimous ceasefire resolution. This is a quote from Mayor Garcia. I know that you worked in Madera City, yes. I hope this action prompts a domino effect. We've been seeing this death and destruction, and nobody wants to see that. The people from Madera don't want to see it either. And so, if this causes another city council, another governing body, to take the step declaring a proclamation for a ceasefire, then by all means, we welcome them. On Monday night, Ojai also passed a ceasefire resolution, a population of 7,590. Like I've said before, like we've all said before, Nevada City really has an unprecedented opportunity to stand for justice and equity and liberty for all by choosing to discuss a ceasefire resolution and hopefully passing it. Historically and presently, communities have often faced divisions surrounding major social change efforts. We know that there is opposition here, but should we fear that? What's really the bigger and more important thing? History shows that movements for justice, though often met initially with friction, ultimately strengthen our society. Through small acts like this, very one that we find presented with, we are truly at the crossroads of history and progress. Gary. Hi. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for listening. I will underscore that there is a big difference between being uncomfortable and truly being unsafe. Voicing hard truths does require moral courage and empathy. I'm going to read the Audre Lorde questionnaire to oneself. What are the words you do not have yet? What do you need to say? What are the tyrannies you swallow day by day and attempt to make your own until you will sicken and die of them, still in silence? If we have been socialized to respect fear more than our own needs for language and definition, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen to me if I tell this truth? What's the worst that could happen to us if we tell this truth and call for a ceasefire? Please answer this. Think about this. Consider this. Thank you.
Thanks, Yasmin. Who was after Yasmin, Gabby?
Charlie.
Good evening. My name is Charlie. I am a Nevada County resident, not a city district resident. We are here for the 6th time, once again asking for you to please agendize the ceasefire resolution. I know last time we were here, we presented 350 plus signatures of your local community members that agree to our request that we add a ceasefire resolution that condemns Islamophobia, condemns anti-Semitism, all forms of violence, and asks that we end U.S. military aid to Israel and call for a ceasefire immediately. About 50 businesses have also signed on, brick and mortar businesses in Nevada City, and I guess I'm standing here 2 weeks later wondering how much that mattered and how much those people's voices mattered, and how do we, as a community in this semblance of a democracy, how do we tell our local government how we want to be heard, and how does our local government hear us? It is incredibly disappointing. I don't want to stand up here and lecture at you, because I don't think you take that very well. No one can take that well. 5 months. We're nearly at 5 months, people. 40,000 dead. Thousands more missing. People are starving. It's been weeks since Gaza's had food. We are looking at not a humanitarian crisis. No one would call the Holocaust a humanitarian crisis. They would call it a Holocaust. They would call it a genocide. We are in a genocide. Why can't this body recognize that the same way they can recognize that we stand against Islamophobia? This statement you gave at the beginning of the meeting, Daniela, is so encapsulating of what we believe as a coalition. Islamophobia has no place here. Anti-Semitism has no place here. Racism, sexism, transphobia. We just need to add one more to that. We stand against genocide as well. Please, if you can't seem to find it within yourselves, to put it on the agenda so we can talk to you about it the way we want to talk to you about it. The least we can do is put a proclamation out as a city that we stand against this. It's the least we can do. 40,000 dead, people. Your mind can't even fathom that number.
Thank you, Charlie.
Hello and good evening, Nevada City Council members. My name is Elisa Wojciechowski. I'll be brief. I am a resident of Nevada City and have been for 20 years. And like so many others in this room across this beautiful county and this country, I also would like to advocate for a ceasefire resolution to be put on the agenda. Please allow us to have an open dialogue with one another about what's happening so that we can come together and stand on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa.
Okay, the next four. Shirley Wrangler, Amanda, Josh, and Diana.
Good evening. My name is Shirley. I've been a resident of Nevada City for the past 8 years. Happy birthday, Adam. I've been watching or attending these meetings for many weeks now, and I just want to ask a question to the council, as well as to Nevada City as a whole, about how long are we going to allow our city hall to platform hate and anti-Semitism? What happened during the last meeting was so wildly inappropriate, and I appreciate you, Mayor, acknowledging that, and also the other gentleman who acknowledged that. I would love to hear the organizers of the ceasefire resolution say loud and clear that this is unacceptable and outline the parameters for public comment. Unfortunately, I was here in person and heard many people in the room snickering and agreeing with too many of these comments.
Please do not respond during someone else's public comment.
And I saw that the Justice for Palestine group asked for more Jewish voices to come, and I am a Jewish voice. I hear you each week saying that you're against anti-Semitism, yet when a Jewish Israeli person is speaking about the tragedies that have happened to our actual family and friends, there are debunked and Zionist lies signs. Some of the leaders of this movement have also attacked and harassed Jews just for existing outside of these meetings. And most importantly, there is no stipulation in the proposed ceasefire resolution about the return of the hostages. How is that justice? This could have been used as an opportunity to actually work for peace and bring our community together. Instead, we've gotten this.
Thank you, Shirley.
I'm reading a statement from someone who couldn't be here. Thank you for your service to our city. I am a 3-digit address Nevada City homeowner named Amanda Grebe and mother of 2 children who are half Jewish, whose great-grandparents were in Auschwitz, whose grandmother was one of the last people to flee Europe. I ask for you to pass a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Palestine. I am deeply horrified at the level of violence, broken international laws, and acceptance of an extremely low standard of warfare, which has included targeting hospitals, bombing thousands of women and children, shooting them attempting to access water and food, and as they attempt to flee to safety. Right now, the starvation deaths of children are happening, thousands more close behind. Johns Hopkins Center just released a report that says 74,000 will die if things don't change quickly from disease and malnutrition. Passing a ceasefire resolution is extremely urgent. Let's be a part of the wave of more than 70 cities in the U.S. standing against this intense violence of war, in which surgeries are regularly being performed without access to pain medicine. I do not agree that a ceasefire resolution will increase anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism has increased during this war and will decrease with a ceasefire resolution. I want my children to be able to practice the religion of their father without fear. I want my friends to feel comfortable speaking Hebrew to their children in the grocery stores. I believe a ceasefire resolution will increase their safety, as well as the safety of their families in Israel. We are the only country in this world blocking a ceasefire. We cannot, as people of ethics and morals, starve and displace an entire population of people in pursuit of getting rid of Hamas. You are our voice to the national government. This is democracy, and the national government is ignoring its citizens, as well as defying the UN with its military support of Israel. It's creating a more dangerous world, and I want our city to stand clearly for a peaceful, just world. $15 billion for war. I say no. This is not a way to a better world. What about money to rebuild Palestinian homes that we are responsible for destroying? Please divest city funds from the military and from Israel. You have the power as our local representatives to stand for what is right. Please do that. I support an internationally mediated peace process that addresses the legitimate concerns of the abuses of Palestinian human rights and the fear Israelis have of violent acts to create a real lasting peace in the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you.
Since apparently I don't think the microphone is working.
It's fine.
It's working.
I'm just going to say, since I should be very clear about it, since it was asked, yes, we condemn anti-Semitism. I was also in the room 2 weeks ago, and what I remember hearing was people in this room supporting a ceasefire, demanding that those neo-Nazis be shut off, and demanding that anti-Semitic comments not be allowed in here. I don't remember people snickering and agreeing with blatantly anti-Semitic comments. I remember the people here condemning that and getting mad about that, because we do not support anti-Semitism. We never supported anti-Semitism, and we never will support anti-Semitism, because we don't support hate or bigotry, and that's what anti-Semitism is. We as a coalition, since we have to say it, very strongly condemn anti-Semitism. There have been countless Jewish speakers who have spoken in favor of this. There are Jewish speakers in this room who have spoken in favor of a ceasefire, because a ceasefire will bring us together. If we have these hard discussions, if we have a discussion as a community, that'll bring us closer together. Actually sitting down and talking will bring us closer together. Not coming up here every 2 weeks and giving speeches against speeches. We need to have conversations. And those conversations need to happen when you actually agendize this resolution. When you say that we can actually, as a community, come down and speak about this. Now I'll go back to what I was originally going to comment about. As we all know, a few weeks ago was the Wild and Scenic Film Festival, a film festival that, as it says, comes to celebrate and inspire activism, specifically about the environment. And currently, the environment, it needs a whole lot of help. It does, and it has, and it really needs it now. And currently, the worst thing for the environment going on is the genocide in Gaza. The dropping of bombs, the massacre of people, the destruction of an entire people. That is what is destroying the climate. Our planet includes the people on it. And so in order to protect it, we need to protect the people on it. And that includes the 35,000 Palestinians who have been murdered and the hundreds of thousands who are starving to death. We need to protect our planet because the United States military is the #1 carbon polluter on the planet. It is the single largest thing responsible for the destruction of the world. And that same United States military is sending arms to Israel. It's sending bombs to Israel, and those bombs are being dropped and releasing carbon into the atmosphere. I hope everyone on this council and in this room agrees that we need to take action to stop climate change and to stop the climate catastrophe. And that includes ending wars, ending every war, including the genocide that is going on in Gaza. And also, I'll finish up with words that I heard at a panel that our mayor attended. The panelists said that we need to listen to our angry youth. That when our angry youth take to the streets and demand something, we need to listen to them because they're our future. And so I'll leave you with that.
Thanks, Josh. I would like to, before we get in, Diana, I would like to call on Keith, our city lawyer, to just speak a little bit to our process. This is what public comment on non-agendized items looks like. If there is an agendized item, how does it look different? Does it? Is there a dialogue, or does it look largely the same? Or somewhere in between?
There's typically no dialogue back and forth from the dais to members of the public because that could easily lead to the body considering something that's not on the agenda, which would violate the Brown Act. So the purpose of public comment is to allow the public to address the body, and the purpose is for the body to listen to those comments and to make minimal direction to staff to agendize any future items that may come up during the comment period.
Okay, and if we were to agendize an item, that would look much like how we're taking public comment now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Diana, please.
My name is Diana. I'm a Nevada City resident with a 3-digit address. I come here today for the 5th time requesting that you add a ceasefire resolution to the agenda, including a demand for immediate humanitarian aid to Gaza and the condemnation of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and all other forms of hate. This experience, mobilizing for a ceasefire, advocating for Palestinians, educating others, has felt so isolating. I often feel like I'm screaming into a void in this room, on social media, with folks who just don't want to engage or listen. I'm constantly wondering, what will it take for people to listen to our cries? Will it take a certain percentage of signatures on the petition? Will it take a certain number of bodies showing up here in this room? Will it take more small towns taking the lead so you can follow? Will it take a certain number of innocent lives lost? Will it take one of your own community members engaging in an extreme act of protest? I certainly hope it will not come to the extreme. By now, I assume you've heard of the sacrifice that Aaron Bushnell made in order to draw attention to the atrocities happening to Palestinians. Self-immolation is widely recognized as the most extreme form of protest possible, done to publicly invoke a visceral reaction that people cannot turn away from. Aaron's last words were, quote, "I will no longer be complicit in genocide. I am about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it is not extreme at all. This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal. Free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine," end quote. While we are not engaging in extreme acts of protest, and I really, really hope no one in our community ever gets to that point, we are suffering. We are experiencing a profound, unrecognized collective grief. This is deeply impacting your community, and we are here asking for your help. Please put it on the agenda. Talk about it amongst yourselves, if not in dialogue with us. Talk about it. Bring it to the council. That's all we ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Couple questions to Keith again, our city lawyer. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the limitations are about council talking about things amongst ourselves?
The law doesn't really get into the details of the discussions and deliberations you have. It only provides that you can't take action on an item that's not on the agenda.
And in terms of leaving this meeting and talking about an issue amongst ourselves as council members?
So two of you could do that, but the moment you engage the discussions and deliberations of a third member of the body, that would be a meeting because it would be a majority of the membership, a quorum, and you couldn't do that without noticing the meeting and allowing the public the chance to be there.
Great. And this question is to either our lawyer or our city staff, because this is not something that I've encountered on my time on council. And so my question is, you know, we have public comment. People come here and they speak. They say their relationship to Nevada City. They might be residents. They might work here. They might own a business. They might spend money here. Their ancestors might have lived here for 13,000 plus years. Everybody in this room has a different investment. My question is, when presented with a petition, which is something that I've never been presented with before, how is that sort of looked at or taken into consideration as not being actual people? We can say it's voices, but it's names, and it can be symbolic of voices, but I'm wondering, how does that typically, how do city councils receive petitions? What sort of weight does that carry? Okay.
It doesn't carry any legal weight. It's not a initiative petition. It's not a formal legal action process in order to enact an ordinance, which the law provides, unless it meets all of the requirements of the Elections Code. But typically, a petition would be handed to the city clerk and then presented to the body for its consideration and for its information. And then it would be up to the body to direct staff to agendize any further action that you deem is necessary.
Great, Keith, that you spoke really well to the legal part of that. Sean, do you mind just commenting on the sort of more practical piece of that? Is there anything you'd like to add? No pressure.
No, Keith handled it well, I think, from the legal side. From a practical standpoint, anything that comes through under the Elections Code, the city has an obligation. It's a stepwise fashion. We have to recognize it. We have to allow for petition and collection of signatures, and there's a whole process for that. Absent that, there is no basis to which to weigh the submission of petitions or anything else other than those that deliver it to the council. So it's your own ability to weigh that. So it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean anything. It just means that we have no ability to weigh it within the confines of our government structure.
Okay, thank you for that. Gabby, more public comment, please.
We have two left, and then that will be the end of the public comment. Kiana Kraft and Noga Wazowski. Sorry if I have to did that.
I mean, I'll take them, but it's going to be closed. It closed at the beginning.
We'll take it.
You'll take it. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. And then you would be third.
Okay. Hello, Council. My name is Kiana. I'm a 3-digit resident address in Nevada City. I'm here once again to ask that a ceasefire resolution be put on the agenda. Real quick, I just want to say that you were the ones who asked us to collect those signatures. And whether or not you choose to weigh that, you may not be legally, but that's time that we all took to collect those signatures to show you. And so, that feels great. This week, the small town of Ojai, California joined the 70 other U.S. cities who have passed ceasefire resolutions. Mayor Betsy Stick said, "I believe it is our moral obligation and responsibility as humans to do everything we can to reduce the suffering of all beings with whom we share this planet." Councilwoman Souza Francia also said, "I think that a ceasefire is the best way to stop or reduce anti-Semitism. The truth is that violence begets violence." Ojai thought that this issue was important enough to their community to engage with them and pass this resolution. It's also worth noting that you had a meeting scheduled with us that I have not heard anything back from you about. We have come here month after month begging you to listen, to take a stance, or at the very least have an open discussion with us. This week, I had to watch a young man, Aaron Bushnell, light himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in DC to protest the genocide. He felt that committing self-immolation was the only way to get his government to listen to him, and we're here for a similar reason. They're not listening. Polls say a majority of likely voters support the U.S. calling for a permanent ceasefire, and yet, just last week, the U.S. was the sole veto at the UN Security Council, blocking for the third time a resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. At the last council meeting, we delivered over 300 signatures at your request, and we have heard nothing back. Those signatures were collected with a small group of people with very limited time, and most of the people we talked to signed and thanked us for trying to pass a local resolution. That goes to show that there's a significant portion of the population here that is in support of this resolution, and your silence tells us that you refuse to even engage with the people you are representing. The Guardian came out with an article stating that the pro-Israel lobbies are a powerful force rivaling the NRA and spent more on the 2022 congressional race than any other special interest, including oil and gas. There's no mystery as to why the large majority of our elected officials are not condemning the collective punishment that has taken place in Gaza since the events of October 7th. Historically, social progress is never met with open arms. It's never done by following the status quo because it fundamentally seeks to change it. While City Council may not have typically been the place where we weigh in on local political issues, I think you will find that as time goes on, if our government continues down this path. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiana.
Short person here. My name is Noga, and I live 50 yards outside of city lines. You all know already that I'm Jewish, Israeli, American, and that everything everybody in the coalition has said represents my Jewish ethics. One of the fiercest responses to anyone calling for a ceasefire has been that the call either incites anti-Semitism or is itself anti-Semitic. And in the last meeting, we all learned an important lesson about anti-Semitism and any form of hate speech, what it is, what it isn't, and how to deal with it. And so I want to thank council members for recognizing that the despicable comments of the Zoom intruders last time who directed their hate at an entire people were anti-Semitic to the core and have no place in our community conversations. This, as opposed to comments that criticize the actions of a state, of a country, or of political ideologies, as the supporters of a ceasefire have been doing. Those comments are not anti-Semitic. So thank you for standing up to actual anti-Semites who are also Islamophobic, racist, bigoted in all kinds of ways that we abhor, we in the coalition. And thank you for firmly shutting them down in real time. So I want to pivot a little and respectfully point out that the Zoom option that has been closed in response makes this space accessible to constituents who can't be here in person for myriad reasons. And I encourage you to not respond to online hate speech in a way that limits access to people who aren't able to attend in person because they are medically vulnerable, disabled, caretaking, working, and living many other circumstances that prevent them from coming to this physical space. I think you can trust yourselves to maintain safety in this discussion as you did last week, without a disproportionate response to verbal aggression that ends up also excluding our more vulnerable community members. So please reopen the Zoom option. I'm last. Reopen it next time. And to this request, I'll of course add the ongoing one. Please also agendize a ceasefire resolution. We can all handle that conversation too. Thank you.
Thank you, Noga.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Ethan Cameron. I live on North Pine Street here in downtown Nevada City. I'm back just to add my voice as one of your constituents to the request to add a call for a ceasefire, a condemnation of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia to the agenda. Hopefully it will pass as well. And would like to just reiterate, as I've said before, that this is an issue that affects all of us. It comes across as an international issue, but it's our tax dollars that are going to pay for this. I don't mind our tax dollars going to pay for the cleaning of graffiti off of stop signs. I do mind our tax dollars going to fund a genocide. I don't think there's any major movement in our country's history that hasn't involved some level of civil disobedience. And it's just an element of how things happen. You know, it's how people get their voices heard. Another way people get their voices heard is by asking their elected representatives to promote that voice as well. So please add a ceasefire to the agenda. Please make it very clear that this ceasefire is very different than anti-Semitism, which I think we all know it is, and then pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. All right, that ends the portion of public comment for items not on the agenda. A couple of notes. I myself, I'm not sure about other council members, did not ask folks to collect signatures. I asked for folks to submit signatures that they had collected, and I think that distinction is very important. You can laugh, that's fine. You think it's funny? It's an important distinction. Also, to the group of folks that Councilmember CC and I were supposed to meet with, we will be rescheduling. As I wrote to you, I had COVID. COVID sometimes takes a while to heal from. Thank you for your patience, and we will be rescheduling with you soon. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break and then reconvene.
You get cake?
Okay, folks, we are back. We're moving on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. Before we take action on the consent calendar, we will hear any public comment on consent calendar items only, including any requests to pull consent items. Do we have any public comment on consent items? All right. I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar.
So moved. Second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Great. All those opposed? All right. I'm hearing none, so the motion carries. Moving right along to the business portion of the agenda. We have removed item number 6, so moving on to number 7. Consideration of amendment number 1 of a public improvement agreement between the City of Nevada City and Jonathan Rowe to provide funding for the sidewalk, Little Deer Creek drainage, and parking improvements at the Stonehouse and adjacent city right-of-way, and authorizing the city manager to make minor changes to milestone payments as may be needed to accomplish the project without changing the total amount payable to the city. Mr. Sean Grayson, please take it away.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On May 10th of 2023, the council approved this public improvement agreement. The project didn't begin as was outlined in the agreement, and the owner did not put his share of the funds into an escrow account. That was a condition of the agreement, and because of that, the city can't participate because the agreement necessitated that he place his monies in escrow, and then we would subsequently do the same, and then we could distribute funds. Despite that, the owner's contractor has done a significant amount of work on the site, including the remedying of the sinkhole that was there, the replacement of the culvert, the securing of the creek, and up to the point of where it is now, it is an unpaved parking lot. We're waiting until the facilities open back up again to make hot asphalt, which we anticipate in a couple weeks, although we'll see if the weekend storm impacts that at all. And then they will get going again. Ultimately, this amendment to the agreement is needed, like I said, because the escrow account wasn't utilized. So this changes it from an escrow account to 2 milestone payments that will be made by the city directly to the property owner instead of using an escrow. Ultimately, in discussions with the owner, we're keeping all of the benefit to the community that was there. We're eliminating $12,175 of city contribution because of work that was originally planned but didn't end up needing to be done in the work that has already been done, so that won't be paid for, wasn't paid for by the owner either. And we moved the lease, the non-exclusive use lease of the parking lot for public parking purposes. It was originally supposed to start in May of last year. Now it'll start in June of last year. It'll now start in May of this year and carry for 7 years on the go forward. So we don't lose that year with the amendment because the project wasn't complete. The project went to the Planning Commission October 12th of 2024, and they approved the site plan, but they didn't approve some of the items, notably the railings for the bridge, the fencing, and the railings for the Sacramento Street area. There was a couple other items as well, lighting and things that weren't part of the city project, but that were part of the owner's project. Ultimately, the things that weren't approved are what creates our new milestones. So essentially what we have in the agreement is that the city will pay the majority of its contribution on completion of the project minus those railings, the fencing, the bridge itself, and the Sacramento Street improvements. And that total is $271,774. And then the second milestone payment will be completion of the project in its entirety, which is those additional items. The reason why that's really important is because milestone 1 won't be paid until they pave the parking lot and make parking spaces. So ostensibly, that's the last thing left to to allow for the provision of public benefit. And then once everything else is done, we'll have the complete path along the creek and the bridge across the creek and the other amenities, but that would be the second milestone payment, is the completion. We anticipate that they'll be done with milestone 1 by April. They want to be done sooner than that. They want to do a grand reopening sooner than that. They are definitely incentivized to move forward. Item number 2 is probably looking around July. They'll have to manufacture the fencing and bring it on site, install it, and those kind of things. I requested in the action that you authorized me to make any needed changes to the milestone payments without changing the total amount payable. Here's why. Because we're so far down the road on this project, I could foresee a situation where, for some reason, the parking stop blocks are not going to be available for 12 weeks. And that means we're not going to pay the $271,000 to the owner who's done all of the work for milestone 1 minus parking stop blocks. I don't think that's where we really want to be. We want to get the parking lot done. We want to get it open for business. We want to be able to use it for public parking, especially because the Nevada Street Bridge closure. So that is why I'm requesting that. I wouldn't be authorized to change any payment amounts, just to make minor modifications to the milestone 1 payment if something like that were to come up. And then the additional approvals for the fencing, the railings, and that will go to the Planning Commission at their meeting in March. It is modeled after what the Planning Commission has previously stated their desire to look like, which is the Pine Street Bridge railing, which also matches the railing that will go in kitty corner to this location on the new Nevada Street Bridge. So with that, I don't think Jonathan made it, but the owner, Jonathan Rowe, was, we've been working with him. This is a heavy lift by our city engineer and our city planner to get all of this moving, but I would appreciate if you would approve the amendment number 1 to the agreement this evening.
Great, thank you so much. Any public comment about this item? All right, bringing it back to the table. Thoughts, comments, questions? Lou?
Hi. There's one point that always confuses me in this report, and it confused me last year as well. A fixed easement for pedestrian travel along the newly created sidewalk connecting the trail to the existing Sacramento Street sidewalk. I thought the new trail connects to the Boulder Street.
It does.
Sidewalk. Okay. So that should say.
You're right last time, you're right this time.
Thank you very much. I just want to make that clear, because I saw that they're working on it. I mean, they've cut the stone wall and it's already underway. So if it was meant to be on Sacramento Street, never mind. So one of the remedies in the old contract was the escrow account in case the owner defaults. What are our protections under this amendment if the owner defaults?
So this amendment doesn't change the underlying agreement. It deletes some of the lines that no longer apply because of timeliness. As far as the money goes, the way the escrow account would have worked is they would have put in their money, we would have put in our money, and then at the 7 different points, funds would have been distributed from that account to pay for the work that had been done. In theory, that would have meant that the city, half of each payment at those 7 points would have been city money and half would have been the owner's money. We're at the point now where we're past the halfway point, so it would all be city money anyway. So if and milestone 1 gets us to the point where we have a functioning parking lot that can be used by the property, can be used by the public. If for some reason they were to complete milestone 1 and receive the payment and then stop, the provisions of the contract still remain. We could take over the project. We could discontinue the project and do the remaining items on our own if we chose to do that. If they didn't complete milestone 1, it sits how it sits now. They wouldn't get any payment out of this amendment, and we would still have the provision that would allow us to take over the project and pay if necessary.
Have they gotten any payment at all yet?
Not from the city.
Thank you.
Gary?
Yeah. Well, thanks for the working through this. I know it's not been easy, but the important thing, there were a couple really important pieces about this, we initiated the project because the entire Little Deer Creek drainage was subject to collapse and failure, which would have taken out the entire intersection, likely the entire intersection there, and TJ's Roadhouse would have been a total disaster. So they did get that fixed. I think, and as you noted, and I have noted, city hasn't put a dime in it yet, and they're well past halfway. So getting it done is the thing that's most important here, particularly in timing in relationship to the Nevada Street Bridge construction. I do see our engineer, smiling engineer, sitting out here. I think I'm a little concerned about compaction in a few areas there with the sinking of the trenches and that sort of thing, which may be a product of weather. But there's a lot of damage that has been done to the surface that was, I believe, compacted because of the travel of cars during the wet weather. So I'm just suggesting that it may need to be looked closely for that because we want this project to last a long time. And I'm sure you're on it, but I just, I can't help myself with my Public Works hat, walking by, looking at it and seeing those trenches starting to sink, so.
We appreciate it.
But it's a good, thank you for doing it. The important thing is we prevented the safety, the disaster from happening, and we're getting a good project out of it.
Thanks, Gary. This side of the table.
Hey, I know that there were some issues with the owner putting money in escrow, and I talked to him about it, and, did that all get worked out? What was the issue there? He just hadn't put up the money in escrow, he was paying his guy, what was the sort of backstory?
Yeah, briefly, he basically proceeded without doing that part, and that was unfortunate because that part was the instrument, the vehicle that would allow the city to contribute, because we could put money in escrow if he put money in escrow, and he didn't. So for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. The work has been done, and we've moved past it. This amendment provides all the protections that were there for the city in the first place, and will allow him to complete the project.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
And he's worked with us since this came to light, and has been trying to be a good actor and participate well.
He's not a Public Works project guy.
He is not. He is not.
But he has a big incentive to making sure this goes well now, because he's got a big, and part of this payment is for our use of the parking lot moving forward.
It's use of the parking lot moving forward, as well as the creation of the permanent pathway trail from Boulder Street to along Little Deer Creek all the way up to Pioneer Park, and a dedicated easement of that. Right now we have a floating easement, meaning we could exactly. Whereas this will be recorded on a map. It'll be part of the the city's easement infrastructure. Yes.
Anyway, thank you so much. That's just what I wanted to know. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the update. More parking's great. I'm excited to be on the other end of this project and have it be completed.
I think we are as well.
That's all I got.
I hope we can get on the other end of this project and have it be complete. I'm looking for a motion to approve the amendment and authorize the city manager to execute any related documents.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Gabby, can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Cece?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great. Moving right along. Item number 8, consideration of an asset loan agreement between the City of Nevada City and Ken Baker and Gary Tentel, the owners of the Alpha Building at 210 Broad Street in Nevada City, California, for the temporary placement of a city-owned fire wagon and fire hose cart at the site. Sean, what can you tell us about this?
As you know, and as the public commenter mentioned earlier, we have a carriage house in Pioneer Park. It houses several non-motorized vehicles, meaning they were built before there was motorized vehicles. These include sleighs, carriages, carts, and wagons. And most of the vehicles are either owned by or under the stewardship of the Nevada County Historical Society. But there are several items that belong to the city, including the fire wagon and hose cart. The vehicles are not highly visible within that structure, and it is much fuller than it once was when it was first opened up and things were in there. There was like 5 things in there. Now there's 105 things in there. That might be a little hyperbole, but we have known for a while that the carriage house needs some work. It was originally kind of viewed as it needs a new roof. In having people look at it, that new roof really means a new structure. That structure is not fully enclosed, although it protects to a certain extent from the rain and the snow. It certainly is allowing those carriages to weather away. We would not like to lose that history. So in December of 2023, the Historical Society gave permission to transport and relocate the carriage and sleigh that you see in the Alpha Building now to go along with Victorian Christmas. The Historical Society has a similar agreement with the owners for that. And then local resident and business owner Richard Thomas, who I think is in the back of the room.
Hi, Richard.
Probably not the only person to ever have this idea, but certainly the one that brought it forward has been passionate about making it happen, that we move some of our assets into the building as well. Not only for the visibility of the wagon and the cart, because people don't really go see it in the park, but also to somewhat activate that space right at the entry to the downtown there. So the asset loan agreement includes this allowance for us to move them. It will be covered under our city insurance, even at its new location. Thank you, Gabby, for your work on that. And there's no cost to the building owners in doing this. So where our normal agreements they would provide insurance and things like that. If they were leasing space from us or we were giving them something, this doesn't have that provision because we're covering the insurance, because really we're asking them to allow us to place the items there. The Chamber of Commerce has agreed to serve as the liaison for the placement. They don't have any role in the agreement, but they already have a working relationship with the owners of the building and use it for various events and have access to the building after hours. So our Parks and Recreation Manager, Don Zazdanis, and I met with the Historical Society last week. If you approve tonight, we intend to move our vehicles, but we will coordinate with them because they may wish to move one or more additional of their vehicles or move the vehicles that they have in there already around. And so we'd rather do that in one event instead of multiple trips through there. And there's also the possibility, depending on what moves, whether or not the doors have to come off the front of the building, which Richard has already looked at and has a plan for, but we'll try to do that all in one fell swoop. So with that, I would request that you approve the agreement.
We'll see about that, sir. Any public comment in the room? Richard, would you like to come up and add anything to that?
No, but if I could speak from here, I'd like to thank Sean.
Make yourself comfortable, sure. Speak from there.
Thank Sean for moving this forward so quickly after our discussions, and I'm excited about it, looking forward to seeing all those windows filled with historical items.
Thank you, Richard. I'm so sorry the folks at home probably didn't hear you. Any other public comment in the room? And what about at the table?
I remember when Lou and I first got in, we were getting acclimated to all the departments, and Don took us down to Pioneer Park, and we got to look up close at these things, and they're remarkable. And I think the real cool thing here is that it'll be a lot easier for people to see them when they're downtown, and making use of that building's not too bad either.
What is the plan for the structure in Pioneer Park? You know, people on the rec committee have ideas. Pickleball, that's yeah.
It will come back to your committee, you and Councilmember Klein's committee in the near future. It is an item in our CIP, and although the cost, has probably tripled over the last couple of years as far as what the cost would be there, I would like to, and the Historical Society is open to the discussion of what is the best ultimate approach. Likely, some of them need to be on display somewhere, and others of them need to be in storage until they can be fixed and worked on and then put on display somewhere. If that display somewhere is not in the park, then likely there's a higher and better use for that location than a carriage house. If that ultimately is the best use, as the committee decides and the council decides, then we would look to do that. Likely, if it's a $200,000 project to replace the carriage house, we could invest in other opportunities, other placements at the Transportation Museum or the Alpha or other places to put these things on display and repurpose that location for other recreation amenities.
Excellent.
Side of the table?
Yeah. Does allowing the Alpha Building to use these windows for display relieve the owners of their responsibilities under our vagrant storefront ordinance?
Good.
Our vagrant storefront owners?
Let me be more flippant. That was easy for you to say.
It does not. So they're still subject to that. That has to do with it being not in current use, not being leased to anyone. They can exercise and have other things like active building permits are a way to not be, they're still registered, but they're not paying any fees when they have an acting building permit. And the intent of that is we want them to fix things up so that it can be sold. And we ultimately don't want their money. We want it to be sold in an active space. But no, this agreement in itself does not do that.
Okay, good. I noticed that when we put up the little tiny village for Victorian Christmas on the right-hand windows, they had a black backdrop, which prevented the casual walker by from seeing right through it into an empty building. You can now do that on the left side where the current carriages are displayed. I'm just hoping that someone thinks to do that with the new installations.
Stuart and or Lynn, if you're watching at home.
Do you want to hide our shame? Is that what you want?
Yes. No more questions.
Okay, recently, while in City Film Festival, Richard and I stood in front of Firehouse Number 2 and showed off that beautiful fire engine that no one gets to see. And one of the things that became extremely clear to me over the course of those afternoons was how we fail to capitalize on some magnificent assets that the city owns. That includes the wagons and carts, but it also includes the firehouse, both the firehouses that both need significant work and maintenance and are critical, important assets. As we stood out there and the folks from the visiting town walked by and saw the fire engine, it was amazing. They were just thrilled to be able to see that. Now, we couldn't get it out, but we need to figure out, and that's something I'm going to be very interested in the next year, about how we both preserve and profit from the assets, the historical assets that we have that are so intriguing and so interesting to visitors in this town. The other piece that was really interesting was the number of Nevada City residents who drove by and just stopped their cars in the streets and ran over there because they'd never seen the doors open on that firehouse to see what was inside. I was walking downtown with a visitor today, and I was explaining what was in there, and he said the real solution is just to turn the doors of Firehouse 2 into glass doors so people can see the fire truck in there. It was interesting. But we've got some real...
Planning Commission just tore its hair out.
Yeah, I know. But we've got some real challenges here. Looking at, I live closer to that cart building than anybody else, and I was really pleased to hear that somebody actually goes down there and looks at it, because most people don't, and most people don't know what it is. And that building is in bad shape. It is not, I was not personally surprised that the roofer said, no, we can't touch this because you can't put a new roof on a building that's going to fall down from the weight of the roof. So we've really got to pay attention to that, but I just was completely convinced, and would encourage any of you to hang out around our assets, show them off when somebody's in town, and to see the reaction, because it's really important. If we are a historic town, which we are, if we are a tourist economy, which we are, we really need to look at these assets in relationship to that and figure out how to put them to best use. Plus, it is our history, and this is a great start. Thank you, Richard. It was great hanging out with you. But these are important things that we really need to give some consideration and do to. So that's my point. So I totally support this, along with another piece that's coming up later with the volunteers, because it all fits together. So I just wanted to make that comment because I think this is really important. I think it's something we need to pay attention to.
Thanks, Gary. And thank you, Richard, for being a catalyst in this. And thank you, Sean and city staff, for moving so quickly, as Richard already said from the back of the room and folks at home couldn't hear. I am looking for a motion to approve the asset loan agreement.
I move we approve the asset loan agreement.
I second that we approve the asset loan.
It's your birthday, man. You're going to improve it.
Gabby, a roll call, please.
Councilmember Cece?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
And Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great, moving right along. Item number 9, consideration of adoption of a city volunteer policy. Sean, what's this about?
It's connected a little bit. As a quick go back, Keith wrote the asset agreement, so appreciate him and the city attorney's office.
Nice.
Richard's moving forward. So number 9 is consideration adoption of a city volunteer policy. We have 3 current needs. We're a community of volunteers. There's no doubt about that. The ability to manage volunteers is often a bigger job than anyone really ever thinks of. And so it's often something that's just put on the back burner and you don't do anything with. But we have 3 contemporary needs that we'd like to implement now. And based on a 2009 resolution, the council has approved workers' compensation for city volunteers. That's a normal practice. It is offered through one of our insurance pools, and it is a best practice as well because it is essentially the only thing that can be afforded to volunteers and protect them in the event that they were injured. We also adopted a policy in 2017, a volunteer policy. It was never really implemented as intended, and as things happened 7 years ago, had different requirements and rules, and so this new policy just brings us into the ability to have an umbrella policy that would allow me to approve individual department level or citywide volunteer programs. The 3 that we're talking about now, the first is an event volunteer program. Chief Foss already uses the good graces of the Rotarians and several of our other nonprofits in town to help participate in our events and be extra eyes on the street and the like. This would capitalize on that type of volunteerism, and these folks would be city volunteers signed up with us and doing the same activities that they have been doing, but give us a broader look at that. The second is a history docent volunteer, which is really what the Vice Mayor and Richard were doing last weekend, which is being able to show off those assets that we have instead of having them behind closed doors. The initial implementation of this would be specifically for that volunteers for the viewing opportunities of Historic Firehouse number 2. And then the third is a volunteer defensible space educator. We would normally call them an inspector, but they're not really going to be doing inspections. They're going to be for those in our community that would volunteer to allow these folks come in and do the same things that our staff would do, but they can spend more time talking to them about their rose bushes and why they need to go and where they could go to and what might be a better practice along the way, kind of force multiplier for our new community risk reduction officer, Evan. This position under the policy would be a little bit different. It'll be a small scale deployment to start with. Various positions that we may implement over time might require different levels of background checks. This position specifically would require a background check and a live scan, as would any position that we would contemplate in the future that had unsupervised contact with minors. So with that, those are the 3 programs that I would, if you approved the policy tonight, those are the 3 programs that I would approve implementing. So looking for your approval of the volunteer policy as it's written.
All right, looking for public comment in the room, and also inviting Richard to the podium to share if you would like. I think you would. Thank you for coming up this time.
To the council. A couple of things. This issue was a surprise to me when I came in tonight because I was expecting the first one because Sean had told me that he was going to get it on the agenda for this meeting, so that was great. But then this one was a surprise. I know we had talked about it in the past, so this is great. I think a lot of the problem, part of the issue was my confusion with a liability release, with a full-blown volunteer program policy, et cetera. And I think with that said, just a thanks to Gary and Sean for making it possible for Gary and I to man the doors the Mardi Gras weekend. Oh no, it was the Wild and Scenic weekend, and that was very gratifying. There is some dust on the engine, so we'll need to get in there and dust the engine off, but it's in incredible shape. And lastly, I'd like to extend a public apology to Sean and Gabrielle for my rather dramatic exit from a meeting Sean and I had up in his office. Would have been worthy of a movie scene, I think, but I was over the edge. And Sean, I apologize, and I apologize to the entire city staff, and I appreciate your officers for not taking me down.
Richard, I'm sorry I missed it. Thank you for the apology.
But you got us to tonight, so
Yeah, it worked.
we appreciate it.
All right. Any comments at the table?
Is there any other public
Gary?
comment? Yeah, well, if there's no other public comment, at the risk of sounding overexperienced on Councilmember Klein's birthday.
Why be different?
One time I make a joke. Proceed.
In an earlier life, I did an enormous amount of work on volunteer management and volunteer management programs. I did. I taught it in 6 states and Canada.
Process guy.
We believe you.
It was a
And
process.
it was a great process. It was all process. And I'm not sure which city you hijacked the volunteer program from, or perhaps Keith wrote that.
No, that is largely my direction to Steve, and gave him a couple to come from, and he made it better than the ones that I said to steal it from.
It is an excellent policy. It is timely. I mean, it is immediately at the place where other volunteer management policies are in time and space, because they get old and antiquated. So it's fully up to date. It's sophisticated in the sense that it talks about the pluses and minuses of managing volunteers and what it takes to do that. And in other words, you have the right to work with your volunteers to ensure that they're productive or otherwise. So it's a very, very good policy. And I think we're talking about social capital here, right? One of our great assets, this is a town of volunteers. It's a community of volunteers. It is a community, and that's why we're so good at what we do, whether we agree or not on some items. So I think this policy is a great step forward in continuing to work with Nevada City in its truest form.
Great, thanks, Gary. Anybody else at the table?
I just want to understand if, so this is primarily for people who want to volunteer for city positions, for duties related to the city, I mean, is there going to be a volunteer pool maybe that we can, tap into later? I mean, I know you have these 3 positions that you've already identified as being needed, but is there a bigger, we have a policy now. Do you have any other sort of aspirations with our volunteer?
So because we're a community of volunteers, most of the people that would want to volunteer for us are already volunteering somewhere else. And so I don't foresee us having a volunteer pool, but I do foresee us leveraging other places that have volunteers and including them into our program in some fashion. The likely first place that might work would be with the Historical Society, who has hundreds of volunteers across, the Searles facility, the Searles Library, the Firehouse Number 1, the Mining Museum, the Transportation Museum, which we usually called the Narrow Gauge Railroad Museum, but it's really a transportation museum. And so if there was opportunities for us to leverage that and use people that might want to volunteer, for example, for our art or our history docent at the firehouse, some of those people might also be interested in working sometime at the transportation museum so that it could be open more than a couple days a week. So I could see that, but I would not anticipate, like the 2017 program was really revolved around soliciting a lot of volunteers and then having these pools that could go out and do different things. And this is much more of a programmatic approach. So we'll stand up programs that have a needs for volunteers, but nothing in this takes away our ability to allow people to volunteer for the day to do, pull weeds or something like that. But they wouldn't be a program volunteer. They wouldn't go through an application and a background check potentially. They would just fill out the one-day release form and be able to pull the Scotch broom that day.
It's very flexible.
Cool, thank you.
Great question, Doug, thanks. Anything else? Nothing
This is
from,
just the five of us trying to get our heads around the idea of volunteering for Nevada City. You'd have to really love this place, wouldn't you? The more the merrier, that's what I say.
all right. With that, I'm looking for a motion to adopt this policy.
I move we adopt the volunteer policy as written.
I second.
And Gabby, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cece?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson? Oh, Councilmember Fleming? I'm visualizing you in my eyes. Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Look at I upgraded
Yes.
you. Vice Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Soon to be Mayor Peterson.
It's okay.
Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Nice blank stare, Doug.
I didn't know how to respond.
I was like, what?
All right. Item number 10, consideration of a letter of opposition to AT&T applications 2303002 and 2303003 filed with the California Public Utilities Commission, also known as CPUC, authorizing the mayor to sign and the city manager to transmit the letter. Sean, what does all that mean?
All right, last item. I almost promise. AT&T submitted 2 applications to the CPUC requesting the release of what's called carrier of last resort and eligible telecommunications carrier designations. These provide critical telephone communication services to the residents of Nevada City and Nevada County, surrounding areas. If the CPUC were to approve these applications, it would be pretty significant to our community. So the map from AT&T's own application is available online. We put a snip of it in the packet, shows that the entirety of Nevada City is within this area that they seek to withdraw from. And so what we're talking about here is what they call POTS, plain old telephone service, or landline service. Although a lot of people have gone away from landline service to VoIP solutions over time, this still remains very prevalent in our community and throughout Nevada County, and in times like we'll probably see this weekend, might be the only phones that work in our community, because the paired copper wire continues to work when the internet does not. So as you know, we're in a very high fire severity area. We have fires, we have smoke, we have public safety power shutdowns. We've had 2 federally declared and 4 state declared disasters in the 2 years today that I've been here. So it's significant that we maintain the ability for our population to be able to communicate across the board, and not the least of which to call 911. That includes the more than 1,000 no longer called seniors, older Americans that live in Nevada City. So the draft letter that is in the packet is aligned with our legislative platform, but it's not directly on point. We do talk about communications and outreach and things like that, but there's nothing specifically in there that addresses this. That's why it's coming to you instead of just having me draft it and have the mayor sign it. So with that, other places up and down the state have been less nice than I think than we are in our letter, but some of them have far less of an impact in urban areas that have redundant systems and haven't had a blackout in 15 years. The impacts might be very different than here in Nevada City. So, but the county took this up yesterday and adopted a separate letter. Sierra County has as well, as many of the foothill communities will be taking it up in March. So with that, we'd request that you approve the letter for the mayor to sign and for us to send along the road to the CPUC in San Francisco.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean. Any public comment on this issue? All right, bringing it back to the table.
I would just say today's internet outage in downtown proved just how timely our objections are and how out of touch AT&T's proposal is. There were businesses downtown that could not conduct business unless they had a landline. I had to pay cash, heavens forbid, for my cinnamon swirl at Java John's. And it wasn't just our businesses. The Rotary was unable to conduct much of its business at its meeting this morning, and I'm sure there were other problems. So I think it's a good idea.
Great, thanks, Lou.
So I'll be happy to let AT&T do this when they can provide me consistent cell service first. We have the worst cell service imaginable. In fact, most of us, to get any kind of reception at all, run through voice over internet to make our cell phones work with our AT&T towers. And I believe the outage this morning was not AT&T, but it was Comcast and Xfinity, although one struggles to separate the quality of one large corporation over another at times. But I would say that our senior population, and I would like to acknowledge Aaron, I hear you loud and clear, who sits on the Freed board. We also have our community with folks with disabilities who are wed to those landlines. A number of the seniors have their help buttons are hardwired. And so it's not a reasonable request by AT&T, and though they swear that that no one will be left without, they can't tell you how that will work. And I just would finish by saying how insulted I was by AT&T personally sending me an email telling me how I could convince my constituents that this was a good idea. Right. I wrote them back an email and they didn't respond. So I really support this, and I think this is a bad idea for rural communities. It's a different story when you're someplace where your cell phone tower works.
Thanks, Gary.
You get the feeling that people who are pushing this at AT&T live in places unlike our place.
Yeah.
And it's not an issue for them, but it's important that we weigh in with our voice and talk about the kind of community we are and how necessary this is for older folks and our handicapped folks, for sure.
I just love learning what a POTS line stands for. I've heard that before. Voice over Internet Protocol. We all know about that now. So AT&T, obviously this is an economic thing for them. They don't want to, service landlines anymore. And we're just not there yet as a society of having coverage, So they're going to make this effort. The CPUC has, time and time again proved that they don't care about us as much as they care about companies.
I forgot to diss them.
And so what's going to happen, we're going to write letters and people are going to object, but the CPUC is going to have to be persuaded by, it's a very similar analogy to what they're trying to do, and I just don't know how, how effective it's going to be. But it's what we have to do. It's what we have to do. It's what they have to do. It's what we all have to do. So let's do it.
Yeah, I think this is another example of corporations screwing over rural communities, and particularly some of the most vulnerable members of our community, by cutting corners. Yes, Josh, people over profits. We saw this happen with PG&E, right? Cutting corners to pay out their shareholders, make some money, and the community suffers. We saw that all through the state of California. In fact, I watched Aaron Brockovich the other day. Did you realize that that was PG&E? I watched it again because it had been so many years, and I was like, wow, that's PG&E. It was before I lived in California when I watched it. So screw you, AT&T. I will happily sign this letter, and you can come talk to me personally. Thank you, Erin Manette, for reaching out, and thank you to the Freed Board for weighing in on this, as they are representing people with disabilities in our community who heavily, like Gary said, rely on these landlines. So I am looking for a motion to approve this letter.
So moved.
Second.
Gabby, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cece?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
And Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Urge the mayor to sign this letter with blood.
I printed it.
Who's blood?
Don't answer that question. All right. Before we adjourn this meeting, I think we have some unagendized business to attend to. And it's not, is there something going on here today?
Oh.
Is there a thing?
Are we talking about like a delicious treat?
The cake.
Yeah, for anyone who's hung in here for the whole meeting, my friend Teresa made me a lovely carrot cake for my birthday, and we can all have a slice of that, as far as I'm concerned.
There it is.
I second that.
All right. And then I am also looking for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
What about our city managers meeting?
Gosh, I'm just trying to get right
I
to
work
the
for
end.
you. It's whatever you like.
Sorry about that. Do we have a city manager's report? Do you have anything to tell us?
It's going to get a little interesting over the winter, so be safe. Our police department and public works crews are out preparing now. If you see some wetness on the road from one of our trailers, that's brining. It's like a salt solution, a lot better than rock salt for the environment, and also a lot more effective at preventing ice. Last thing we want is ice underneath the snow, because the plows don't get the ice up. But please be safe out there this weekend if you need anything from us. Everyone probably has my cell phone and Chief Foss's cell phone, but if you don't and you need help, you reach out to us any way possible. Agenda will get posted this Friday for our second Public Arts Commission meeting. They decided that they're going to meet on the first Wednesdays of each month, so March 6th is their next meeting. It's a public meeting right here in council chambers. Come visit us. And March 13th, our next council meeting will be our mid-year budget. We're not handing out gold bars, so don't show up for that. But otherwise, the last thing I have is that our newsletter is being mailed out to all the addresses, and it's available on our social media and on the website. And we've gotten a lot of feedback on that, mostly about the article at the back about our old airport. Very interesting history there. That's about 9% of the city limits right there, undeveloped at the old airport. So, thank you, Madam Mayor.
It almost didn't happen. You're welcome. Now we're going to do council member reports. Lou, let's start on your end.
Fire Safety Advisory Committee met and just had a really good meeting. That's really all I want to say. Also wanted to say that.
Sure.
Yeah, I was there. It's true.
Yeah.
Well done.
I was very happy to cast my ballot recently, both for a certain measure that is dear to my heart and the Fire Safety Advisory Committee's heart, and for a certain presidential candidate and a certain senatorial candidate whose beliefs align with mine concerning peace.
Great.
Pretty slick. Yes. Well, Wild and Scenic Film Festival was fantastic. You know, it was great. It's amazing. Like I said, I was out there with Richard. People like from all over the place walking by, and saw some great films. It was wonderful. I think there were some really important presentations. A great piece of work. I was out and about today and did see our public works guys just really out there cleaning it up, getting ready. They're always on it, always working. Great to see them street sweeper out, just really making it work. So, but I did enjoy the film festival. And again, I just want to say that, you know, we're going to need to pay more attention to our historic assets. That's just like, I'm there. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Gary.
I would like to thank my colleague on the NCERC for helping facilitate a meeting between Gil Matthews, who's the Executive Director of the Economic Resource Council, and Chris Anderson Space, because there's the tour of Nevada County that goes on where they bring, 3 bus loads of, important people or interested people around the county, and it's hard to sometimes find places for them to go in Nevada City. Last year, they went over to New Mohawk, and they visited some of our cannabis businesses, but this year, they are going to stop at the Tech Center, and they're going to have a presentation, I would assume. Yeah. But anyway, Adam, there was a little snafu on us meeting, and Adam just jumped in and made everything right. So thank you.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, and I'm really excited that we're going to be on the tour, for all its glory. It should be an interesting thing. I've never been on the tour before.
It's so good.
Is it?
It's super interesting.
It is.
There's tons of stuff going on all over.
Well, you learn about things, and, Gil is somebody who used to work with the folks at the Grass Valley Group when it was the Grass Valley Group. He hadn't been over there since, and he was just blown away, and he was very just excited about it. So I think that's going to be a really fun time. I'll let you know a little bit more about when it's going to happen, and we can all be involved.
And naturally, Gil almost married my mother in the 1980s.
Oh my God. He could have been your dad.
That's exactly right. I'd like to echo what Gary said about Wild and Scenic, and just recognizing that these cultural events that we put on are worthwhile just because they're cultural events. Yeah. And at the same time, there is no end to the feedback I get from our local businesses thanking us for anything that brings people to town. So the businesses benefit, and we benefit from having these great events in our town, and we should think up more that we can do in that area. I also want to just say, from my opinion, I think for now it is worth it to not have the Zoom calls. I think at some point the racist dullards, I cleaned that up, will grow tired of this fad, and then we can bring that back. But for now, I'd also remind everybody that they are free to email us, and there is no time limit on emails. So public comment hasn't really been squelched in any way. It's just a different... Doug's phone is publicly commenting at me.
I'm sorry.
You just have a button on your phone that just apologizes?
Yeah, pretty much. For my wife.
So I would urge everybody who can't make it, and there's so many reasons why someone couldn't make it to a meeting, and it's totally understandable, but you can still email us, and speaking for myself, I read those, and we appreciate everybody's comment. And also, if someone wants to give Matthew Coulter a ride to the next meeting, that's an option too. Yeah. It was strange having a meeting without him.
And my understanding is there have been efforts to make contact with people who are regular public commenters via Zoom to make sure that accommodations are being made.
Cool.
Echo everything everybody said about Wild and Scenic. Thank you so much to Public Works for getting out that weekend and cleaning up the town for our visitors. I had the privilege of sitting in the seat for the very first Public Arts Commission meeting, which was a long time coming, just so the folks in the room and also at home know how long government takes to move. That was an idea at least about a year ago that took quite some time to come to fruition, as most things in government do work really slow, which is painful sometimes, I know. So really, really proud of that collection of ladies sitting at the table, which is quite different than this collection of people sitting at this table. And I'll tell you, it was really delightful to be sitting at that table.
We're not so bad.
I didn't, hey.
Gary, it's a better ratio. I was thrilled to be the Daniela at that table.
Thank you. So yeah, congratulations to those folks, and thank you. I said today to somebody that those commissions are an extension, our commissions are an extension of the work of the city and the council. So thank you for joining us in continuing to do the work of this council, to those public arts commissioners. Also, for folks that have been showing up on various sides of what is going on in Gaza in Israel. I just want to let you know that my colleague Gary Peterson and I are looking at a process to have public dialogue and comment. To agendize an item does not allow for dialogue. It's the same as a non-agendized item, which is why I wanted to make that point today, which is not what I would call a conversation or a dialogue. So we are taking steps to look at professional facilitation and looking at a process where we can bring in community stakeholders and assess the consensus of the community to then take action. So thank you for your efforts on that. And with that, I'm looking for a motion and a second to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Cake.
Great, all those in favor?